Part 151. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1501. Child, you don't have to panic or be afraid. We have no hostility towards you. The old man laughed at himself and said, "Ha ha, I dare not hurt Lord Yan Wang. He. This old man, who is suspected to be Tai Genren, spoke humbly and called Xiaoming sir. But his tone showed that he didn't care much about this title. The so-called dare not was obviously just a polite gesture. Xiaoming also has a high-profile identity as Dragon Warrior. He didn't believe that the old man couldn't see it. But the opponent didn't mention it, and he didn't know what it meant. He couldn't help but frown. The old man actually saw such a subtle meaning. He smiled and twisted his beard, saying, "Your Excellency may not know that the Dragon Warrior is different from the King of Hell and is not protected by the Thousand Stars Tower. Your Excellency must remember that when you are not strong enough, you should not mention this identity to others. You must be on guard against others. Oh, by the way, I am not the legendary Tai Genren, but you can call me Tai. Have you asked me anything?" As he spoke, Tai saluted Xiaoming with one hand. "I don't deserve it," Xiaoming hurriedly returned the salute. "My name is Zhang Xiaoming, you can call me Xiao Zhang or Xiaoming." "Dao Zhang is too modest." Tai looked at the several beasts that were still mumbling and fighting on the side. He smiled slightly, "Let them play for a while. I know you must have a lot of questions in your mind. I will tell you from the beginning. Alas, I haven't talked about this matter with anyone for tens of thousands of years. I still have to sort it out carefully." At this time, the other Xiaomings entered Guangmingding, and Hong Xiaoming's body was also moved in. There was only one Yin Xiaoming outside, to show respect. Otherwise, several Xiaomings would talk at the same time, and Tai would have to answer in circles, which would be a bit too much. Seeing Tai pondering, Yin Xiaoming did not dare to urge him to update, and stood quietly waiting. But he couldn't help wondering in his heart. With his strength, he could recall anything very quickly. Tai's strength was far superior to his own, so why would he need so much time to sort it out? Unless the other party had countless clones like himself, which dispersed the computing power of the host. Tai recalled and told the story, completing the story that Xiaoming only knew half of before. Of course, the so-called completion was just to clarify the general main line. There was no need to say more about many details. What shocked Xiaoming was that the Panga world he was in was really a reincarnation world. The guy who thought he was Kawashima Yoshiko actually guessed it right. The story still started with the three major races of humans, gods, and insects. The world they originated from is called Starcraft, which is also a reincarnation world. Tai at that time was just a programmer in charge of managing the optical computer of the alien race. He was also a plot character, not even a reincarnation. Others of his generation had similar identities at that time, and they were not clear about the specific details at that time. Everything I tell Xiaoming now is what they traced back to the source after they became stronger and more knowledgeable. And some things are no longer clear. I only know that several major events happened at that time. The first one was the appearance of Fuxi Qin, Mind Gem. It just appeared in the Starcraft world inexplicably. Tai now certainly knows that this kind of power is called source energy, and many people call it infinite gems. It is one of the ultimate powers of the universe. However, Tai's level seems to be not as good as my master Acha, and he didn't say much in this regard. Maybe they know something, but there is no need to tell Xiaoming. Just when each of the three tribes had a small team fighting for Fuxi Qin, the second major event broke out. The three tribes were completely wiped out. Tai told Xiaoming that the power that destroyed the three races came from the power gem, which meant that the heavenly court took action. The specific reason was not very clear, and they could only guess. It might be because the battle between the three races affected too much range, and they seized countless resources, all of which were consumed in the war between each other. And there are only so many resources in the universe. At the rate of their consumption, when the war is over, the universe will be dead. Even if a new civilization is born, there will be no energy to supply the survival and development of the new civilization. In the eyes of the heavenly court, this undoubtedly accelerated the demise of the universe. So they took action when they could no longer bear it? Some people may ask, if destroying all three races, wouldn't it also accelerate the demise of the universe? Actually, it is not. Because the heavenly court only killed the people of the three races and their affiliated races, there was no damage to the environment and the galaxy. It was not to use lasers, cannons, and missiles to blow up the planet. Only the Infinity Gems can fight against the Infinity Gems. The reason why the three races can leave so few descendants is all due to the existence of Fuxi-Qin. At the last moment, Tai didn't know what the process was. Anyway, the last bloodline of the three tribes escaped to the Yanhuang three-star system. Then they fought each other to their death. When he said this, the old man added, "At this time, there are several things that we cannot confirm. For example, the first thing is, when did we leave the reincarnation space? Some people think that it was at the moment of the group destruction that the Fuxi-Qin brought us directly to the real world. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to escape the means of the heavenly court. But some people think that in fact, when the Fuxi-Qin appeared, we had already left the reincarnation space. Because the heavenly court generally does not enforce the law in the reincarnation space. It is precisely because of the departure that we were hit by the power gem." Wow, is it so complicated? I feel a little dizzy. Xiaoming couldn't help but sigh. He also felt that both sides seemed to have a point. He couldn't judge right from wrong. After all, the power gem was a source of energy that Xiaoming had never come into contact with, so he was naturally unfamiliar with it. Tai smiled and said, "This is just the beginning. And where we are staying, there happen to be three different galaxies." "That's right, it's the Yanhuang three-star system you have in mind." "Tisk tisk, good name, that, we all thought that it was Fuxi-Qin that brought us there." Later, Guangchenzi and a few others raised objections. The universe is so empty, how could it be so coincidental? They believe that it is very likely that the bosses of the three tribes created these three galaxies with the power of Fuxi-Qin. They wanted the three tribes to have an environment to recuperate, and they probably didn't expect that. This became the fuse of the war. Xiaoming was suspicious. "Why do you say that? The three tribes are enemies, isn't it normal for them to fight?" "Yes. That being said, if the place where we settled was very barren and had few resources, then in order to survive, the three tribes would have to unite. If peace lasted for a long time, maybe there would be no war in the end. But the three galaxies were close to each other, and there was no pressure to survive, coupled with hatred. This is, alas, its time and fate." At this time, the two seemed to have the same emotion in their hearts, and they looked at each other in silence. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1502. Back then, three armies from the three tribes of humans, gods, and insects fought fiercely for the Fuxi-Qin, Mind Gem. The masters of the three tribes each obtained a part of the authority of the Mind Gem. Originally, they were fighting and excluding each other, and each party wanted to monopolize the gem. If that continued, it was really unknown who would win in the end. Moreover, while fighting, the three parties reported the matter to the leadership of each tribe. The reinforcements of the three parties were also launched one after another, and a large-scale three-party melee was about to break out. But everything was interrupted by the power gem. I don't know which big boss in the heavenly court took action, but the energy of the power gem destroyed the three major races. At that moment, the masters of the three tribes who had obtained the authority of the Mind Gem worked together to activate the power of the Mind Gem. The last bloodline was preserved for the three tribes. If it weren't for the reconciliation of the masters at that moment, the power of the mind gem could not be truly exerted. No one could survive. Those tribesmen who were still alive thought that the masters had died. In fact, they were not. The mind gem protected their souls. In a sense, they became civil servants working for the mind gem. Their status was probably similar to that of the king of hell. It was just that the shock they received at that time was too great, and the masters fell into a state of chaos for a long time. If not, the battle that ended in mutual destruction would not have happened later. Unfortunately, there is no if in the world, and the survivors of the three tribes fought again and died together. They are really a group of little experts in seeking death. However, after these people died, their souls were not taken away by the underworld. The reason was that they were too close to the mind gem, and the power of the soul gem was rejected. The souls of these people were accepted and influenced by the mind gem, and some of them also obtained the qualifications to call on the gem's energy. They became relatively low-level civil servants, roughly equivalent to the black and white impermanence or the judge. Because they obtained fewer permissions, they woke up from the chaotic state earlier. Much earlier than those masters. This is also easy to understand. It's like everyone goes to a buffet. Excluding other factors, those who can't eat will be the first to eat and leave. On the contrary, those big eaters need to eat longer. Or use the underworld as an example. It took Xiaoming a month to complete the interview in the underworld, while the interview of ordinary ghost messengers did not even take an hour. After these people woke up, they suddenly found that they had done a stupid thing. The masters finally saved the bloodline of the three tribes, but it was destroyed by their selfishness and greed. They had to find a way to remedy it. It happened that at this time they had obtained a little authority of the mind gem, and were qualified to dispatch part of the energy and do many things. So the three tribes did different things. It feels that the realm of the Protoss is relatively high. What they care most about is the inheritance of knowledge, the second is the continuation of their own race bloodline. The low-level civil servants of the Protoss did not want the knowledge accumulated by their tribe to go to waste. So, with the power of the mind gem, the Protoss domain was created, which is equivalent to the cosmic library. Except for the masters who have not woken up yet, all of them gave up their memories before their death and transformed into the form of light spirits, also known as star spirits. At the cost of not harming any living beings, in exchange for not being harmed. All they did was to retain knowledge. In addition, they will also look for like-minded creatures and guide their souls to devote themselves to this great cause. With each additional light spirit, more knowledge will be accumulated in the God realm. After millions of years of accumulation, the number of light spirits has reached a terrifying level. In fact, the Yellow Emperor Galaxy, especially the life forms on the Quafa planet, have also been subtly influenced by the knowledge of the Protoss. Many species that originally existed only in the memory of the Protoss have reappeared on the Quafa planet. In addition, the secondary purpose of the light spirits is to revive the Protoss. As mentioned earlier, for this purpose, they have been collecting high-quality energy to feed a few Protoss in the medical cabin. This is also the reason why Xiaoming can be recognized by the light spirits. He provided too much source energy to the light spirits. So Xiaoming can obtain some of the Protoss's mind gem rights. Later, Hong Xiaoming was resurrected in the body of the Protoss and accepted all the Protoss's technology trees. That was also the backdoor that the light spirits left for the descendants of the Protoss. The situation on the Zerg side is very different. Since all members of the Zerg are living beings, including the Leviathan, which has the nature of a spaceship. So they have preserved the most racial genetic information, DNA. Racial resurrection is not a problem at all. But the Zerg has a fatal flaw. This race is extremely aggressive and predatory. In other words, it is greedy. Even if the race is resurrected and developed, it is not certain when it will be exterminated by the heavenly court. it may not be lucky enough to survive again. The civil servants of the Zerg want to give the Zerg a plan for long-term survival. So there are the Zerg Fog and the Sea of Spirit. In addition to preserving the skills and knowledge of the Zerg, the Sea of Spirit also secretly affects the character of each Zerg. It greatly reduces the aggressiveness of the Zerg. Otherwise, how could the powerful Zerg stay in the core area of the Chu galaxy and never come out? Some people may ask, if there is no aggression, how can the race survive? The development of a civilization will always compete with other races for resources. In fact, the spiritual sea does not completely prohibit the Zerg from invading and plundering. As long as it's not too much. They also left this kind of hint in the Zerg spiritual sea. In addition, the Zerg mist is a stroke of genius. As long as the amount of fog is large enough and the volume is large enough, the Zerg fog can obscure the stars in the core like the Chi galaxy. Absorb all the energy emitted by the star. You must know that Pangu only receives 2.2 billionth of the solar radiation energy, which is enough for Pangu civilization to develop to this day. Not to mention that there is still a large amount of energy that has not been exploited. Imagine that the Zerg mist receives all the energy radiated from a star. How long can the Zerg survive? Let's put it this way, even if the Zerg don't hunt, just absorbing the energy in the fog is enough to keep the race going. Even after the star burns out, the Zerg can still survive for a long time. With this time, they will be able to find a second star as their home. Without the pressure to survive, the Zerg's desire for external aggression naturally dropped to a very low level. According to Tei Genren, they all felt that the new Zerg race was very Buddhist. There are some signs of developing in the direction of the gods. This surprised the civil servants who were born in the human race. Thinking back then, the ferocity of the Zerg left an indelible impression on them. I never expected that the Zerg could actually grow as crooked as it does now. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1503. Zi once said, we must look at problems from a developmental perspective. It's not surprising that the Protoss and Zerg would have such changes. First of all, they experienced the catastrophe of genocide and personally experienced the power of the Heavenly Court/Wanyun Temple/Power Stone, which is one of the ultimate powers in the universe. According to the summary and analysis of Tei and others, heaven specifically punishes greed. To put it simply, God forbids people to be too greedy. The three tribes of humans, gods, and insects were destroyed because they consumed too many resources. Not just an ordinary amount, but billions of times the consumption. Even this greed has no end. The war between the three tribes continues, and they continue to crazily grab resources. This led to the punishment from heaven. At this time, Xiaoming raised a question. The three races of humans, gods, and insects have almost divided the world of StarCraft, and a protracted war broke out. Is it too late to incur divine punishment? Doesn't this mean that as long as you are not greedy to this extent, you can be greedy casually? Can it still serve as a warning? Tei explained to him, the three tribes have never been punished because that world was originally a reincarnation world, and the reincarnation space was specially set up that way. In this regard, Qianxin Tower, Wanyun Palace, Beizanja, and other forces have already had a tacit understanding. Later, because the StarCraft world escaped from the reincarnation space and came to reality, it was quickly punished. Judging from the intensity and power of that punishment, it was likely that the Supreme Leader of Heaven personally carried it out. Regarding the detailed issues regarding the establishment of civil servants in heaven, Master Tei did not disclose too much to Xiaoming. He thought that a king of hell would have known about it a long time ago. Judging from what he said, there should be countless heavenly soldiers and generals in heaven who are responsible for patrolling the universe. Manage the sin of excessive greed. Different levels of heavenly soldiers and generals have different management capabilities. Maybe ordinary heavenly soldiers are responsible for the individual or family level, heavenly generals are responsible for managing the national level. Of course, this is just an analogy. From the words of Master Tai, Xiaoming roughly understood this meaning, but the specific details are still unknown. In short, in the real world, even if a civilization is far from reaching the level of the three races of humans, gods, and insects, heaven will have already sent down punishment. If you are very unlucky, if a person is too greedy, extortionately exacts money, and frantically possesses and squanders other people's property, he may be directly punished by a heavenly soldier. One thing to note here is that occupying resources is not actually a fault, but excessive waste and consumption is a sin. If a civilization fairly and reasonably allocates resources in the area under its jurisdiction, heaven will not impose natural punishment. At this time, Xiaoming also came up with an idea. According to legend, gods will be punished by the purple sky divine thunder when they are promoted. Could it be related to this? There seems to be nothing wrong with condensing such a huge spiritual energy into one person's body and calling it a kind of greed. Xiaoming wanted to ask Tai Genren, but this was the first time they met, and this topic was also suspected of offending the other party, so it was not convenient to talk about it. All of the above are actually excuses. Xiaoming is just following his heart. The other party must have the strength to destroy the bodies and souls he has now exposed. Even if they go all out, Hong Xiaoming, who is hiding in the soul gem, may not be able to sit back and relax. So if you should be cowardly, you have to be cowardly. Let's look at it later. At present, Xiaoming continues to listen obediently to Master Tai and tell the story of the past. In addition to feeling the power of heaven, the gods and Zerg also felt the power of Fuxi Qin, the soul gem. It is normal to be affected by them. The human race was also affected, but the situation was quite different from the other two races. Although the souls of all those who died in battle were received by the Mind Stone. But not every soul can withstand the test of the soul gem and become Fuzikin's civil servant. Among humans, Tai and others became civil servants. They are all technicians, maintenance workers, ordinary soldiers in the original fleet, these types of grassroots. There is hardly any bureaucracy. When they woke up, they were surprised to find that the electronic systems used by humans in the past had actually become spirits. They guessed that it must be Fuzikin's fault. It is not just large-scale artificial intelligence that is affected, such as the optical brain control systems of several spacecrafts and other auxiliary computer systems that manage various mid- and low-level functions. Even the military's single-person electronic devices, such as mobile phones, learning machines, game consoles, tactical glasses, etc., have been refined by the power of the Mind Stone. In addition, Tai and others were surprised to learn that one of the human spaceships actually crossed the space-time gate and arrived at a galaxy highly similar to the solar system. This spaceship, carrying a nine-tailed fox with a light brain and a large number of monsters, crashed on a planet that is highly similar to the human home planet. That is Pangu star. But at that time, Pangu was still in the Stone Age when humans were still ancient apes 1.5 million years ago. As for why there is this time and space gate? Why does there happen to be a solar system on the other side of the door? Later, why could this space-time gate exist for 1.5 million years without even changing its relative position? These problems are simply not something that nine-tailed fox and other artificial intelligences can analyze and understand. Note that the nine-tailed fox has always maintained contact with other light brains in the Yanhuang 3-star systems. After discussion, they decided that the purpose of building optical brains is to serve mankind. The monsters like the nine-tailed fox can simply create a new group of humans in this new Earth. At the same time, the group of monsters living on the Nuwa planet in the Yandi galaxy were doing the same thing in that galaxy. Although there are no ancient apes on Nuwa star, fortunately, there are human and many kinds of animal and plant gene samples in the human spacecraft, and it is much easier to revive humans there than on Pangu star. Although this batch of artificial intelligence has become spirits, they are still too immature and do not consider things comprehensively. Resurrecting humans is purely asking for trouble. When new humans appear, should these computer systems regard the new humans as their new masters? Handing over powerful weapons to a group of people with a low level of civilization. That's playing with fire. However, this will soon not be a problem. Soon, Genren and his group of original masters woke up. And now they are different from the past, and they are more powerful than these artificial intelligences that have become spirits. The monsters were quickly subdued by them again. In fact, the monsters basically did not resist. After all, they have not been independent from humans for a long time. Tai and others found that they even knew how to name themselves after the monsters in myths and legends, which was really fun. They simply played with them and named themselves after the legendary gods and immortals. This is the origin of the name Tai Genren. It can be imagined that among this group of people there were Guangchenzi, Chijingzi, Sahangdaoren, etc. It was this group of gods and immortals and monsters that dominated the history of the two galaxies. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1504. With the power of Fuxican, the Protoss created the Cosmic Library, Protoss Domain, the Zerg created the Zerg Mist and the Spiritual Sea. At the same time, the immortals of the human race also wanted to make a big move. Since it takes a long time to fly in the universe and pass through the space gate to go to Pangu star, Tai Genren and his people do not have such strong strength. They were not even reincarnators before, and there was no way to improve their combat effectiveness. Although they have mastered the authority of Fuxican, it does not mean that they can easily travel through space. Therefore, Pangu star, which is opposite the time and space gate, was abandoned by the immortals and handed over to the monsters such as the nine-tailed fox to handle it. They are making trouble on Nuwa star. Before they woke up, many races were resurrected by monsters on Nuwa star, including humans. But the monsters thought it was not fun, so they borrowed the concepts from many human games back then and transformed a large number of races with intelligence no less than humans. Among them are the familiar orcs, elves, undead, and so on. This is not surprising. After all, many monsters are originally game consoles, and there are games in slightly larger computer systems and even mobile phones. They have rich experience in this area. Their actions have formed a situation of fierce competition on Nuwa star. But it has also caused frequent and fierce wars. Sigma, degree, seeing this situation, the gods were shocked. How could this be possible? How did the three tribes of humans, gods, and insects perish? The lessons of the past are not far away. Are the monsters doing this because they think they are not dying fast enough? So the gods used their brains and used a way to solve it, that is, to create a huge virtual game. They connected all the highly intelligent life on Nuwa star to the game. The flesh that remained in reality was taken care of by the gods. With the abilities of the gods, there is no need to use technological tools such as game warehouses. In this way, all wars and consumption are limited to virtual games. Needless to say, everyone can guess that the later Magic Planet game has a great connection with this game. Although energy is consumed in virtual games, it is difficult to attract punishment from the heavenly court. One reason is that this consumption is far less than in reality. The second reason is that the gods also call on the energy of the mind gem to enter the game, which makes up for the loss. This is certainly not a particularly brilliant plan. There is no way, after all, these gods are not of very noble origin. How much political and economic talent can a group of technicians, maintenance workers, and low-level soldiers have? It is not bad to be able to do this. Xiaoming can't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Why do they act a bit like the Matrix? The difference is that the purpose and background of the two are completely different, so they can't be generalized. In addition, Xiaoming has been to Nuwa Star and remembers it very clearly. It is now clearly in a state of undead disaster, and the entire planet is almost full of undead. Many other races, including the human race, are barely surviving in the cracks of the undead. It is very different from what Taigenren said. What's going on? As I said, we should look at the problem from a developmental perspective. Of course, a lot of changes will happen in 1.5 million years. They just started, and the story is still going on. The first major change is the joining of the Protoss and the Zerg. Although the Protoss and the Zerg are far away in two other galaxies, they can communicate with each other with the power of the Fuxi-Qin. Just like the real distance between my master Acha and Xiaoming, it is estimated to be extremely far. With the power of the Soul Gem, she can find Xiaoming at any time. After understanding this function, the three parties of humans, gods, and insects had a cordial and friendly exchange. After some operations, the Protoss god realm was included in the virtual game. The Zerg also created a worm game belonging to their own race, and it can interact with the human race's game. Xiaoming has played that worm game before. Unfortunately, it is not to his taste. The second major change is that the power of the reincarnation space began to infiltrate the Yanhuang 3 galaxies. The power between the infinite gems can confront each other or cooperate with each other. How exactly did the Mind Gem and the Time Gem negotiate, and who came forward to represent them, Taigenren didn't know at all. Only one result is known, that is, the Fuxi-Qin did not resist the infiltration of the Chaos Bell. The creatures of the three galaxies got the chance to become reincarnators. Even a few civil servants like Taigenren became reincarnators. As a result, there are all kinds of secret realms in the virtual games created by the human race. The secret realms of the Magic Planet game also came from this. The third major change is that the big guys of the three races of human, god and insect have awakened. Their realm is higher, and Taigenren dare not speculate rashly. The magical thing is that several big guys of the human race, as well as a few people who like to join in the fun in the insect race and the god race, have actually joined the farce of this game. They have occupied the titles of saints such as Hung Junlizu, Laozi, Yuanqi Tianzun, Tongtianjiazu, Jian, Zunti, and Nuwa. The first batch of gods did not dare to use these titles. There are too many wolves and little meat, so other big guys of human, god and insect have to grab those slightly lower titles, such as Janai Yuanzi, Kongxian, Jade Emperor, Three Emperors, etc. The people who used these titles had to change their names helplessly. The big guys upgraded the entire game and created a game with the prehistoric period of the investiture of the gods as the background. Therefore, this group of people, gods, and insects are called the prehistoric forces. Xiaoming is actually in this game now. Although it is in the game, with the ability of these big guys, the game world created is almost the same as reality. Xiaoming's body entered the game in person. In fact, the so-called reality is also a different kind of game. Maybe the real world is made up of countless worlds that are separated from the reincarnation space. Xiaoming thinks this possibility is very high. Taigenren also agrees. At least the Yanhuang 3-star system comes from the reincarnation space. The same is true for Pangu Star. Tai's master Yuanqi Tianzun once saw the details of Pangu Star and told his disciples. That is also a reincarnation world that is separated from the reincarnation space, and it is a private world. However, the owner of that world is very powerful. He opened this private world to reality. This strength is indeed respectable and awe-inspiring. The behavior of the nine-tailed fox's wave monster is actually messing around on someone else's territory. Fortunately, the original owner was not offended. He may no longer pay attention to this place, maybe he doesn't care about such trivial matters, or there may be other reasons. Anyway, he didn't show up. Just take it as his acquiescence. Taigenren's behavior of creating virtual games to reduce resource consumption was praised by the saints. If the practice of the heavenly court is to use military destruction to deter greed, then the practice of the prehistoric forces is to teach the method of increasing revenue and reducing expenditure. Zerg Mist is a good method of increasing revenue, and virtual games can be used to reduce expenditure. The saints continue to explore in this direction. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1505. The Dead Soul disaster of Nuwa Star is actually the result of the indulgence of the saints of the prehistoric times, and it is also an attempt to save resources in a new way. Moreover, there is another very important inducement, that is, the power of the underworld has not entered the Yanhuang 3-star system. One of the most direct results is that the souls of the dead creatures in the 3-star system have been wandering around, with nowhere to go, and there are more and more. This is especially serious for planets with a large number of lives. Note that although the dead souls will not be taken away by the underworld, the new life will still have its own soul. For the souls in the 3-star system, they are allowed to enter but not to leave. This is the case with Quafu of the Huangdi Galaxy and Nuwa of the Yandi Galaxy. In the Chu Galaxy, due to the plug-in of the fog, the Zerg was reborn in space. So the souls of the dead Zerg floated in space. It is much more spacious. The light spirits of Quafu Star did not take these dead souls seriously, but only took some of them to become new light spirits. The others were ignored. In fact, there are still some dead souls on Quafu Star that have evolved into the elemental race, and the whole race has marched to Nuwa Star and participated in the melee. So Xiaoming did not see them. This matter was of course secretly manipulated by the prehistoric forces, and Taigenren did not tell Xiaoming specifically because there was no need. Later, Xiaoming became the Pluto and turned Quafu Star into his own territory, which enabled him to transcend so many dead souls and gain a lot of merit. Of course, Taigenren did not know about this matter. There was no need for Xiaoming to tell him. They were the same. The Zerg in the Chu Galaxy had their own way to deal with the dead souls. The spiritual sea has a function, which is to put the souls of the dead Zerg and other creatures into the bodies of the newly born Zerg that have no soul control. To some extent, this is somewhat similar to the 6 reincarnations in the underworld. It's just that all the dead souls are reincarnated into the Zerg. Compared with the real 6 reincarnations, it is too far away. It can only be said that the prehistoric forces are emerging forces with source energy authority, and they are still very immature in any aspect. It is normal that it is not as good as the underworld. Moreover, the heart gems are not as professional as the soul gems in this regard. They still need a longer time to explore. Let's talk about Nuwa Star. The souls of the dead creatures here were transformed into the undead race by the monsters at the beginning, and then the number naturally became larger and larger. It was not until the gods woke up that they restricted them with virtual games. Because the undead race can also play games. However, the creatures are still dying, and the number of dead souls after death is increasing. Some are transformed into the undead race, and some are just floating around, which is difficult to deal with. When the saints woke up, this was already a very serious problem. Later, these undead were included in the prehistoric game. At the same time, the saints found a bright spot: the undead species is actually very special. It meets the standard of saving money. They can survive for a long time, consume very little energy, and do not need to reincarnate. You must know that a new life also consumes a lot of resources from conception to growth. So, the prehistoric forces used Nuwa Star as an experimental site. Withdrew from the Yanhuang 3-star system with the virtual game. Let's see what these 3 planets will eventually develop into. However, there is a backdoor left. The strongest natives of Nuwa Star can only cultivate to a level. Once they reach S level, they will be caught by the prehistoric game with the rainbow bridge like Xiaoming. Because they think that A-level masters can barely be accepted, but S-level masters consume too much energy. It is not suitable to stay in reality. Remember, the strongest person Xiaoming once met on Nuwa Star was Brahmin, a 7th level intermediate undead mage. From Brahmin, I learned that the undead race said that all the masters above level 8, that is, S-level masters, are in seclusion to study magic skills. Death Harvest is one of them. It turns out that those are just legends. Masters above S level are not in seclusion, but have been included in the prehistoric game. Not only the undead race, but also S-level masters of other races. I don't know if they are doing well in the game. Xiaoming thinks it should not be very good. Since it is a game with prehistoric as the background, I don't know how high the strength will be. Just S-level, just a bunch of younger brothers. Sympathy. After hundreds of thousands of years of development, Nuwa Star has indeed been completely ruled by the undead clan. The other races still alive on the ground are not because the undead clan cannot destroy them, but they are deliberately kept. It is equivalent to being kept in captivity. Only if they continue to reproduce and thrive can they continue to add fresh blood to the undead clan. The undead clan bosses are not fools. The biggest reason why the undead clan on Nuwa Star can rule the world is naturally the strong military force, which is always increasing. Another reason is the problem of masters. There are no S-level masters on the entire planet. This has strengthened the strength of the undead clan in disguise. Because compared to other races, the undead clan is best at the skeleton sea tactics, while other races need to use more masters to compete with them. Without top masters, the undead clan has a big advantage. Their rule on Nuwa Star is quite reliable. If nothing else, since the undead rule the entire planet, there has been no large-scale war on Nuwa Star for a long time. At most, it was just some minor fights. Other races were not able to start a war, and the undead leaders were too lazy to start a war. Because they all knew that no one could do anything to the other. So there was no need to fight. Compared with the scene of countless races and hundreds of feuding wars in the past, the current Nuwa planet is actually very peaceful. The consumption of various resources is naturally very slight. The ancient saints and gods all found it interesting when they saw the current situation of Nuwa Star. This is also a very effective method. On some planets where the war cannot be quelled, you can try to use this method to suppress them. Lest they intensify and eventually provoke a certain heavenly boss to take action, that would be the end of their lives. Speaking of this, Master Tai said with emotion, "My junior brother, Daoxing Tianzun, has long expected this result. You know, he made a statement back then. We didn't believe it before, but now it seems that he is right." Right. Xiaoming quickly took on the role of admiration. "Oh? May I ask what Xing Tianzun said back then?" "Haha, my junior brother once worked as a reincarnation for a period of time. He got the inspiration from a world called Resident Evil. He felt that if people in that world all turned into zombies, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Look at it now, the Nuwa Star will know." Xiaoming could only remain non-committal about this. He did not have the experience of Tai and others exterminating the clan. Although he possessed the yellow energy seeds of the soul gem, he had not been baptized by the power of the gem. So I still can't keep up with the ideas of these gods. Relatively speaking, Xiaoming is considered a moderate reformist. He doesn't think that human behavior in Resident Evil has become so urgent that zombies need to be used to clean it up. Although he himself had nothing good to say. But wouldn't the undead natural disaster be too extreme? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1506. Despite their different opinions, Jiang Xiaoming believes that he is not qualified to question the prehistoric forces. The strength of Tai Genren alone is far stronger than Xiaoming. Not to mention the saints. Their realm and knowledge are also far above his own. It is very likely that their ideas are more correct, while his own are narrow-minded. Besides, under the influence of the soul gem, Xiaoming, as the Hades of Quafu, is no longer particularly concerned about reality. After all, there is still the underworld to make the final punishment for each soul, and reality is just a test. Mature underworld officials are reluctant to interfere with reality easily. If they see someone doing evil, the underworld officials will either take him away directly or wait until he has done enough evil and enter the underworld to be punished. And the desire to change the real world is not particularly strong. Xiaoming's current mentality is maturing step by step. His current idea is to continue to accumulate merits and strive to expand his jurisdiction in the underworld, and include the Yanhuang 3-star systems in his scope in the future. The Zerg is fine, but those souls of Nuwa Star have always been undead, which is meaningless. Wouldn't it be better to reincarnate and experience different lives? The Mind Gem does reject the power of the Soul Gem, mainly because the abilities of the two are somewhat similar. But the Mind Gem does not reject Xiaoming. Because Xiaoming is not only a civil servant in the underworld, but also has the source energy seeds of the Mind Gem in his body, so he is considered one of us. Of course, the Mind Gem cannot reject one of its own. This is Xiaoming's natural advantage. It is almost impossible for other civil servants in the underworld to extend their tentacles to the Yanhuang 3-star system. The great merits here can only be harvested by Xiaoming. Unless a new ghost messenger appears inside the Yanhuang 3-star system. But the probability of this happening is probably infinitely close to zero, so there is no need to worry. Xiaoming suddenly remembered that when he met with my master Acha last time, he had proposed to hand over the Yanhuang 3-star system. The ghost messenger Zhao Li was actively trying to accept it at that time. Acha then observed it, and then neither accepted nor refused it explicitly. He only said in Chui Sting. At that time, she probably saw a lot of things, but she deliberately didn't say it. Now that I think about it, even if Acha didn't figure out all the details of the Honghuang forces, he probably knew most of it. In terms of Taoism, the Honghuang forces can be traced back to 1.5 million years ago. My Lord Acha has at least experienced the birth and death of countless worlds, and is much older in terms of qualifications. Although there are many gods in the Honghuang forces, my Lord Acha should also have countless Hades, judges, impermanents, and ghost messengers to help. Who is stronger and who is weaker? Xiaoming secretly imagined a great battle between gods in his mind, but he knew very well in his heart that there was no possibility of a fight between the two sides. Suddenly, he thought of a question. Since the Honghuang forces withdrew from the Yanhuang 3-star system, why are Guangling and Protoss still there? Even the Magic Planet game is clearly a transformation of the virtual game that was the predecessor of the Honghuang game. What's going on? Tai Genren smiled and twisted his beard. Is this a problem? Although the Honghuang forces withdrew, they still continued to pay attention to the development of the 3-star system and Pangu Star. Moreover, there was no need to take the Light Spirit species away. The Protoss domain was bound to the Light Spirit species, so it was naturally not taken away. In addition, the saints and gods left, but some monsters, led by the nine-tailed fox, expressed their unwillingness to leave. They still wanted to continue to watch the growth of humans on Pangu Star. So the saints drained their energy, which was equivalent to temporarily sealing them. They were not allowed to interfere too much with the pace of human development. The saints took away the well-made Honghuang game, and the original virtual game was closed. Everything about the virtual game was stored in the depths of the memories of these monsters, waiting for the opportunity to be activated in the future. Xiaoming could guess what happened later. It was nothing more than that the new Han Kingdom found the nine-tailed fox, and the two sides worked together to create the Magic Planet game. The Wuxia Planet game was a phased experiment. The New Han Kingdom thought that the scientists and the nine-tailed fox created the game together, but in fact, it was the nine-tailed fox that used the technical strength of the New Han Kingdom to recreate the virtual game of the year. The purpose is to collect high-quality energy and restore the vitality of the monsters. By the way, help the New Han Kingdom train its troops. Many high-level NPCs in the game are the incarnations of monsters. As for why the game content is so similar to the various legends of Pangostar. No other reason, because the legends of Pangostar were originally spread by these monsters. Although it was later adapted and processed by various human brain holes, greatly enriching the content, the overall style is basically the same. The game's questions seem to have answers, but another question comes to Xiaoming's mind. Master, how much do you know about the family of the 12 kings of Dakan? Master Tai frowned slightly. The 12 kings of Dakan? Oh, you mean them. Ha ha ha, do you think they are time travelers? It makes sense. Isn't it? The fact that the 12 kings of Dakan were time travelers was not only thought by the major families of Pangostar, but even many historical researchers thought so. Listening to Master Tai's words, it seems that the truth is not so. Xiaoming was inevitably a little surprised. Well, actually it's not wrong to say that they are time travelers. It was a trick that Manjusri, Samantabhadra, and Sahang Taoist worked together. They left some information in the blood of the descendants of Yan and Huang, covering all the history, politics, economy, science, and technology of the Earth from primitive society to around 2000 AD. Every time a specific historical period comes, a group of people will receive this information at the same time. There is too much information for one person's brain to hold. Due to the protection mechanism of the human brain and the hidden hand of Sahang Taoist, they will naturally regard themselves as time travelers. It can only be said that their situation is very similar to that of time travelers. Nani? Do you mean that the 12 kings of the Great Qin are not time travelers, but have acquired memories similar to those of time travelers? That's right, Tai Genren nodded. However, their performance will not be much different from that of so-called time travelers. By the way, Manjusri and his setting is that a group of people will awaken in the late Qin dynasty, the late Han dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period, the late Tang dynasty, the late Song dynasty, and finally the late Ming dynasty, and the late Qing dynasty. The 12 kings of the Great Qin are the group at the end of the Tang dynasty, which means that the first two groups of people, alas, what a pity. Having heard so many shocking news, Xiaoming has gotten used to it. He nodded in agreement. It's a pity indeed. In troubled times, survival is hard. The first two groups of people didn't change anything. Maybe they were killed in the chaos. In fact, the 12 kings of the Qin dynasty were also lucky. They found a human spaceship that crashed in the Qinling Mountains. With those high-tech items, they were able to establish the later Qin dynasty. Otherwise, they might have died before they could achieve their goals, just like their ancestors, leaving heroes in tears. It seems that even the so-called travelers are not invincible. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1507. Epsilon equals Omicron asterisk, alas, who says it's not true? The group of people at the end of the Qin dynasty, everyone wanted to be the emperor, but they started fighting before they started their business, and they were all ruined. The group during the Three Kingdoms period was also unlucky. They encountered the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and most of them were chopped up by the Yellow Turban rebels. The remaining cats escaped, but they were killed by the government army for taking credit. It turns out that Tai Genren is very concerned about these awakened people and knows clearly the end of the first two groups of people. There is also a sense of helplessness in his words. Xiaoming comforted him and gestured and asked, Genren, forget it, everyone has their own destiny, and you can't force it? Oh, by the way, after you left the Yanhuang 3-star system, you ran to this dragon dung pond. What are you looking for? Do you want it to be quiet here? What's the dragon dung pond? It's the long Aotian void? Don't give nicknames randomly, Tai Genren refuted seriously. With a gleam in his eyes, he said, the saints chose this place for a reason. If I say that there is a powerful technological civilization in this void, do you believe it? Technological civilization? In a void where even stars do not exist? You must be kidding me. There is no foundation for the development of technological civilization here. Wait, don't tell me that you moved a high-tech civilization out of the reincarnation space and put it here. It doesn't count. Look at what you said. How could I, Tai Genren, be that kind of person? What do you think, Zhang Daiyu? Do you want to guess? Looking at Tai's weird smile, Xiaoming complained in his heart, I think you are that kind of person. Although he didn't say it directly, his eyes expressed his thoughts very clearly. I knew you couldn't guess it. Let alone you, we who were below the saints at that time didn't guess it at all. Let me teach you a lesson. Blah blah blah. Tai Genren's words revealed to Xiaoming a direction of development of high-tech civilization that he had never thought of. Having said that, Xiaoming's imagination is limited, so it is normal that he didn't expect it. Originally, in the center of Long Aotian's void, there was a very old elliptical galaxy. It was roughly the same size as the Milky Way, with a diameter of more than 100,000 light-years. There were about 100 billion stars in total, mostly smaller red dwarfs and yellow dwarfs. This galaxy was very lonely, and the nearest galaxy was more than 1 billion light-years away. This distance was too far. A technological civilization that dominated the entire galaxy was born in the galaxy. Later, they called themselves Shadow Civilization. Soon, Shadow Civilization discovered that they had no room to expand. The distance of more than 1 billion light-years was daunting for them. And there was no node of the Pan-Universe transmission network here, which meant that they could not jump out with the power of the space gem. This TM was a Jedi, an island in the sea, an oasis in the desert. When the energy of the entire galaxy was exhausted, that was when Shadow Civilization had completely come to an end. Moreover, this event would probably not be too far away. Because this galaxy was very old, the birth rate of stars was quite slow, and the speed of their extinction was very fast. Eating a jujube pill, it would end sooner or later. The Shadow Civilization did not sit still and wait for death. They developed cold fusion technology to an extremely high level. Simply put, they can simulate most of the nuclear fusion reactions inside stars. As long as there is enough hydrogen, they can produce most of the elements in the periodic table. So one after another, they destroyed all the stars in the entire galaxy. Because for the Shadow Civilization, the nuclear fusion that is going on inside stars all the time is a complete waste of resources. Not only is it not easy to collect that energy, but the elements generated are not scarce. After all, this is an ancient galaxy with a lot of elements. So burning stars are unnecessary. When the last shining star in the galaxy is settled, in the eyes of outsiders and in the observations of other civilizations, this galaxy is no different from the void. Of course, the destruction mentioned here does not mean to completely annihilate the stars. The Shadow Civilization cannot do that. They just break up and split the stars into gas clusters that are far from enough to support nuclear fusion reactions. These gas clusters can be easily collected and used when the Shadow Civilization needs them in the future. Of course, destroying a star also consumes a lot of energy. However, as long as the star is prevented from continuing to burn, there will be a lot of controllable energy reserves, which is still very cost-effective. In this way, the remaining resources of the entire galaxy are enough to keep the Shadow Civilization alive for a long, long time, a long time. With such a long time, they can continue to study the next topic. After these resources are exhausted, where should the Shadow Civilization go? The technology tree of the Shadow civilization is undoubtedly very much in line with the appetite of the prehistoric forces. This is exactly what they need, a very clever increase income and reduce expenditure technology. Especially suitable for technological civilization. That's why the prehistoric forces will come here from afar. Include them in the prehistoric game. By the way, copy other people's scientific and technological achievements. In the future, if the humans on Pangustar waste too much, or reach the point of exhaustion, they will give this technology to Pangustar. It's definitely not possible now. The Saints think that the current leaders of Pangustar are not qualified to obtain this technology at all. It is not just the humans of Pangustar who have the chance to obtain these technologies. Any other race has the opportunity. It mainly depends on whether they have such desire. In addition, the Shadow civilization is not at a disadvantage. The prehistoric game is also a help to them. Purely technological means may not be able to solve the problems of the Shadow civilization, but with the power of the Mind Gem, it should not be too difficult. The premise is that the Shadow civilization has the ability to obtain some of the rights of the Mind Gem. In fact, in the universe, cold fusion technology is not unique to the Shadow civilization, but they have developed this technology to a near peak level. The prehistoric forces have actually incorporated several similar civilizations. Of course, Tai Genren did not take the initiative to tell Xiaoming about this. The Saints and Gods have a stronger detection ability than the Shadow civilization, and quickly discovered the other civilizations around. They also found that this place has become a garbage dump for those civilizations. In line with the principle of not wasting anything, the prehistoric forces used the artifact Rainbow Bridge to pick up all the garbage thrown in by other civilizations. The garbage picked up is a resource that can be used with the technology of the Shadow civilization. No matter how small the mosquito leg is, it is still meat. They don't mind. If there are still living people in the garbage, then get them and put them into the prehistoric game. God is merciful. After doing this kind of thing many times, Long Aotian Sukong naturally aroused a little suspicion from the surrounding civilizations. The reason why the double-forked Scarface was exiled here by the family was to let him explore the secrets here. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1508. Xiaoming's incarnation of Sir Scarface and the spaceship he drove were forcibly taken away by the Rainbow Bridge. In order to keep the secret of the prehistoric game, the Rainbow Bridge used by the Saints is much more powerful than the original version. Especially when it comes to getting off the hook. Xiaoming touched this mechanism. Therefore, almost all clones, mind beasts, parasites, and even spatial coordinates were forcibly recovered. In this way, Xiaoming will not be able to reveal the secrets of the prehistoric game to the outside world. The masters in the universe are like clouds, the powerful are like stars, and there are probably hundreds of millions of life forms with various magical abilities. If the Rainbow Bridge did not have this function, the prehistoric forces would have been clearly investigated long ago. The special function of the Rainbow Bridge ensures that it can cut off the temptations made by 99% of the people. However, there are always 1% exceptions, such as weirdos like Xiaoming. Hong Xiaoming's soul was protected by the underworld/soul gem and was not caught by the Rainbow Bridge. At the same time, Orange Xiaoming's world was extremely special and he was not caught. The functionality of the Rainbow Bridge is not foolproof. Fortunately, the strong people who can carry the Rainbow Bridge are basically very measured people, and the prehistoric forces don't need to worry about these people doing bad things. The Saints just don't want to cause trouble. Even if there is trouble, the Saints are not afraid of trouble. When the time comes, it's just a matter of showing off the tricks. According to the established procedures, Xiaoming automatically became a novice player when he came to Hong Huang game. Due to his high strength, he directly descended into the heaven in the prehistoric game. The elf arranged by the game system also appeared in front of him. Given that there are other species that can have multiple bodies at the same time, the elf is naturally not surprised by the appearance of multiple Xiaoming at the same time. What really scares the elf are the residents in Xiaoming's soul, Jiji, Lushu, Xianru, and the nine-tailed fox's clone Mao Mao. They originally belonged to the prehistoric power system. Although they did not follow the saints at the beginning, their status has been retained by the system. So what the elf saw was that a group of NPCs with relatively high authority appeared in the player's position. Of course it was confused. The receptionist was down, and the administrator quickly took over, so the woman with the flying sword stepped in instead of the elf. Unexpectedly, she was not much better. She was prepared for the presence of several monsters, but she was not prepared to force a king of hell to enter the wild game. She couldn't handle this matter, so she could only replace it with a higher level immortal. Therefore, Tai Genren, one of the 12 golden immortals of Chanxiao, personally came forward to receive Xiaoming. Although, this Tai master is not the one in the legend, but a high-level Kozer. However, considering the power of the Mind Stone and the long training time of 1.5 million years, this Tai may not be worse than the original one. Master Tai also had to come forward. After all, the person captured by the Rainbow Bridge this time is too special. Pluto is already a high-ranking official in the underworld. The Dragon Warrior's status in the reincarnation space is also extremely respected, not to mention that he has fed 3.5 monsters from the ancient forces. Mao Mao the nine-tailed fox, can only be regarded as half a monster. Xiaoming should be considered a favor to the prehistoric forces. Naturally, special care is required when dealing with such matters. Even though Master Tai always acted calm and composed, in fact, he was secretly prepared for bleeding. Unexpectedly, the development of the situation was completely beyond his expectation. Xiaoming was very easy to talk to and didn't feel like he was at a disadvantage at all. There is no intention of holding on to the pigtails. In fact, Xiaoming, who has always followed his heart, does not feel that he can speak like a lion at all. The prehistoric forces were too powerful, and he didn't dare. Anyway, not only did this incident not cause any harm to me, it also made me clarify a lot of things. If you don't really suffer a loss, then it doesn't matter. Besides, the 12 kings of the Qin dynasty changed the historical direction of Pangu planet. This matter was the work of 3 golden immortals in the prehistoric forces. Therefore, it is not just 1 or 2 people who benefit, but billions of people across China. Even the indigenous people in America, Africa, Australia, South Asia, the Middle East and other places have been greatly blessed. Xiaoming himself is also a vested interest. Drink water and remember its source. We must remember this kindness. So as long as the prehistoric forces are willing to use the Rainbow Bridge to send him back, Xiaoming will be grateful. Even if they don't want to send him back, Xiaoming still won't be too dissatisfied. There will still be a little bit of unhappiness. Sending Xiaoming's multiple bodies home separately was a piece of cake for Master Tai. But before Xiaoming left, he still asked a few words, asking Xiaoming if he was willing to join the prehistoric forces. Xiaoming holds multiple positions. He is also the King of Hell and the Dragon Warrior. He can also be regarded as a potential stock. The prehistoric forces are willing to train him well, and his status in the future will definitely not be lower than the 12 golden immortals. If Xiaoming is reluctant to let go of his relatives and friends, Tai said that as long as there are not too many people, he can use the Rainbow Bridge to bring them all into the prehistoric game. Everyone will be treated well. After hearing such a generous offer, to be honest, Xiaoming was really tempted. After thinking about it, and not knowing why, Xiaoming still reluctantly rejected Tai's invitation. Master Tai didn't take it seriously and arranged for the Rainbow Bridge to return Xiaoming's bodies and souls to their original places. Except for individual cases. However, Tai Genren has no way to restore those clones, mind beasts, parasites, etc. Xiaoming has to go back and redeploy them by himself. Since Xiaoming did not put forward any conditions, this made the real person feel a little embarrassed. He always wanted to give some gifts to make up for it. He was also afraid that if the gift was too expensive, Xiaoming would realize something and then ask for too much. This scale is not easy to grasp. Finally, taking advantage of Xiaoming sending back the 3 monsters, Taijianren gave him a return gift, a full set of technology trees for the 3 tribes of humans, gods, and insects. In fact, these 3 tribes are not completely technological civilizations. All 3 have mastered very powerful mental skills. Therefore, technology tree is just a convenient name. It may be more appropriate to call it inheritance. Before, Xiaoming, as the master of the Zerg, had already opened part of the Zerg inheritance. After resurrecting with the body of the Protoss, he obtained the inheritance of the Protoss. In order to obtain the inheritance of the human race, Xiaoming once made a deal with my master Acha. He became the user of the reincarnation disc. I don't know whether it is a loss or a profit. Now, the inheritance of the human race is so easy. Xiaoming's previous planning was wasted, which is really speechless. Back then, the Zerg spiritual sea was only willing to teach Xiaoming a few Zerg skills, and only allowed Xiaoming's Zerg to have a limited number of soldiers, which almost made Xiaoming fall into choice difficulties. Now it's good, Xiaoming can learn all the skills at will. All the soldiers can be cultivated or manufactured. Moreover, the situation of the Protoss and the Terran is the same, so comfortable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1509. Xiaoming didn't chat with Taijianren in the Honghuang game for too long, at most just over an hour, and then he came back. Therefore, most people on Pangustar didn't know that Xiaoming had left, let alone that he almost couldn't come back. A few people did notice Xiaoming's departure, but most of them thought that Xiaoming went to the reincarnation space to play. As a reincarnator, it's normal to go to the reincarnation space from time to time. No one thinks it's a big deal. Only a very few people felt something was wrong. They were a few people who were very close to Xiaoming. The first to bear the brunt was Brother Wen. This second-generation zombie with plant props all over his body was playing games in a villa in Tokyo at the time. Fortunately, he didn't use the game cabin produced by the manufacturer, but borrowed the ability of Xiaoming's uniform beast game goddess to access the Magic Planet game. Zhang Wen likes the beast like the game goddess. He obviously has his own exclusive game cabin, but he is unwilling to use it. He always uses Xiaoming's beast. He said that he was afraid of mechanical failure in the game chamber and that the beautiful woman's mind beast was more reliable. In fact, everyone knew what he was thinking. As mentioned earlier, the 100 female ghosts headed by Nai Xiaoqian have merged with some of Xiaoming's uniform mind beasts. Nai Xiaoqian merged with a housekeeper uniform. At the same time, there were several female ghosts who merged with the uniform of the game goddess. The female ghosts gave the uniform mind beast a clear face, making it look more lifelike, much more vivid than Zhang Wen's own mind beast, so it is understandable that he licked it. Moreover, the female ghosts also greatly improved the ability of the mind beast. In the past, the props matched with the game goddess were virtual helmets, while the game goddess merged with the female ghosts could be matched with various game loading tools. The game chamber is just one of them. Zhang Wen is now using a very comfortable massage chair. He enjoys the massage while connecting to the game. Very comfortable. That look is too showy, and Xiaoming and Xiaojing both feel embarrassed to look at it. However, the 4 female ghosts arranged by Xiaoming to serve Brother Wen all liked this fat man very much, which was really unbelievable. He also changed the names of these 4 female ghosts: housekeeper Xiren, game goddess Qingwen, maid Muo, nurse Wen. This is the rhythm of treating himself as Beiyu. When Xiao Ming was captured by the Rainbow Bridge, these 4 famous maids also disappeared at the same time, which shook Brother Wen. Jiang Wen suddenly left the game, and the massage chair under him disappeared, and the whole person fell to the ground. Fortunately, the second-generation zombies were stronger and did not break his butt. But he was inevitably startled. He looked around and thought Qingwen was joking with him, and began to look for Qingwen all over the villa. Who knew that not only did he not find Qingwen, but even Xiren and other several mind beasts disappeared. Only then did he realize that something big had happened. You know, even if Xiao Ming goes to the reincarnation space to do the task, the mind beasts in the real world can still continue to exist. If even these mind beasts disappear, it means that Xiao Ming has encountered something serious. Jiang Wen believes that Xiao Ming has probably encountered a strong opponent and needs to remove the mind beasts placed in the outside world and concentrate his energy. At this time, he must not take the initiative to call to harass Xiao Ming. If he interferes with the battle, wouldn't it be killing people? So he contacted Xiao Jing'er to ask about the situation. Because Xiao Jing'er is in the military medical university, the military has special protection measures. So when she is in school, she has no mind beasts or clones around her. These can't enter the school gate. Outside the school, the brother and sister rented a house, and only a housekeeper mind beast was stationed there all year round. Brother Wen planned to let his sister go and see. However, Brother Wen's luck was very bad, and he couldn't contact Xiao Jing'er at all. Not to mention that the mobile phone was turned off. He called the school dormitory to ask, but he couldn't find anyone for the time being. Jiang Wen was so angry, 1 or 2 of them disappeared. Did the 2 brothers discuss to play tricks on him? Or did the brother and sister encounter a strong enemy at the same time? Thinking of this, Brother Wen couldn't help but start to worry. Although he knew that the brother and sister were not afraid of death. Xiao Ming, needless to say, even if he died, only a small part of him died. His sister Xiao Jing'er had the ability of death of a Taoist friend, not of the poor Taoist, and she could be resurrected immediately after death. But he still couldn't rest assured. Brother Wen was not the only one who was forced to quit the game. There were also the retired soldiers and policemen headed by Zhu Xingxiu hired by Xiao Ming. The game cabins they used were all transformed by Maomoer or Xiao Shenan. When Xiao Ming left, Maomoer and Xiao Shenan were also taken away, so they naturally couldn't play anymore. In addition, in the private world of Yu Yu Hakusho, there are some insect humans and monsters who are also playing games. Because they are in the private world, they are also with Xiao Ming, so they are not separated from Maomoer and Xiao Shenan. But Maomoer and Xiao Shenan are separated from the game console. As a result, these insect humans and monsters can't play the game either. They talked a lot for a long time, and it was not until Xiao Ming came back that the situation was completely calmed down. By the way, let me mention Ruan Mengmeng, who was living with Yin Xiaoming. She didn't notice Xiao Ming's disappearance at all. Because December 7th was a Wednesday, she was studying in a cram school when the incident happened. When she got out of school, bought vegetables, and went home to cook, Xiao Ming had already returned. Everything had returned to normal, and Ruan Mengmeng naturally didn't notice anything unusual. And the other people were also comforted by Xiao Ming. It was just a little thing to be gone for more than 2 hours. Jiang Wen told Xiao Ming about the fact that he had not contacted Xiao Jing'er before. Xiao Ming was confused. But soon, the 2 received a call from Xiao Jing'er to report that she was safe. They were relieved. Come to think of it, Xiao Jing'er was in the military medical university in Zhongdu, and she was actually quite safe. There was no need to worry. Xiao Jing'er and Brother Wen were very interested in Xiao Ming's experience. So Yin Xiaoming arranged for his clone to explain to them, and he took the time to log in to Zhang Xiaoliang, Xiaoming, in turn, and rearranged the eyes in the Yanhuang 3-star systems. In the Huangdi star system, in the Mizu Scientific Research Space Station, Cecilia Jane, who had been guarding Zhang Xiaoliang, felt that she seemed to be dazzled. The machine that was monitoring Zhang Xiaoliang's body just now seemed to show that the other party was online. But in a blink of an eye, it was gone again. It was really strange. Could it be that after logging in, he found that he was wrong and immediately went offline? But it didn't make sense that the speed was so fast. According to the settings of the Magic Planet game room, a normal person hasn't even finished logging in such a short time. Maybe it's because of Dazzle, or the machine has a malfunction. Cecilia checked and found that Zhang Xiaoliang's body was indeed not logged in. She sat back in her chair with a little regret. She didn't know that there were already a lot of parasites in the room. They were spreading to all directions of the space station. The parasites created by Xiaoming can be so small that they can't be seen by the naked eye. Of course Cecilia couldn't find them. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1510. Xiaoming's S-level strength is not something to brag about. The 3 consecutive actions of logging into Zhang Xiaoliang, releasing the parasite, and exiting Zhang Xiaoliang took less than half a second in total. Therefore, Cecilia Jane, whose strength is only E-level, of course cannot find it. Even people with stronger strength can't find it. When Yin Xiaoming logged into Xiaoming, Lieutenant General Miao Qing, a B-class expert who was holding a meeting for members of Xiaopei camp, failed to notice the brief change of Xiaoming in the audience. Later I was shocked. Speaking of which, there are many ghost clones on Quafu Star. You don't need to do anything to log in to Xiaoming. Xiaoming actually has another purpose here. Previously, Master Tai gave Xiaoming the inheritance of the 3 races of humans, gods, and insects. In a short period of time, Xiaoming obtained a powerful spiritual skill I own the world. In the world of StarCraft, there is a mysterious race that appears throughout the entire series, the Xel'Naga. The Xel'Naga were born in the void, and they have a sacred mission, to create life and protect endless reincarnations. Whenever a new universe is born, they will use their incarnations to come to this universe to sow the seeds of life, and select potential offspring among countless lives. The emergence of the Protoss and Zerg is actually the result of the intervention of some members of this race. I won't go into the complicated details. According to the setting of the StarCraft world in Samsara space, anyone who obtains part of the inheritance of the 3 major races at the same time will get the inheritance of Xel'Naga. You can learn some abilities that cannot be learned by the 3 races of humans, gods, and insects. Since Xiaoming has obtained the complete inheritance of the 3 clans, he has also obtained the complete inheritance of the Xel'Naga clan. Many of the skills are comprehensively upgraded versions of the abilities of the 3 tribes. I own the world is one of them. This is an ability used to conquer others for one's own use. It combines the Zerg's Zerg Conquer skill, the God's Mind Control skill, and the Terran's Hypnosis skill. And it has been upgraded to a powerful mind control skill that can target multiple targets within a wide range. With this skill, you can easily expand your army. After logging into Xiaoming, Xiaoming used this skill in the Xiaopei camp. Of course he did not do this to expand his troops, because there was no need for it. Xiaoming just learned a new skill and wanted to try it out, but couldn't find a suitable place. Simply selected a group of special targets. He plans to conquer his own clones and modified bodies. These replicas and modified bodies, after all, have their own DNA, so they can barely be considered famous. Externally, we can claim that we want to give these clones a better life and are not willing to let them continue to be cannon fodder and experimental subjects. The number of clones left in Xiaopei camp was actually not that many. Afterwards, Xiaoming logged into Xiaoming and Xiaoming one after another, and went to the Nuwa and Shu galaxies. While releasing parasites, clones and mind beasts, he also conquered a large number of clones containing himself. DNA replicas and modifications. They were all placed in Guangmingding or Kunlun to live. The clone is okay, it's basically the image of Xiaoming when he was young. There are a huge number of modified bodies of all kinds. Orcs, elves, dwarves, trolls, etc., these are all relatively reliable images. There are also those centaurs, naga, and murlocs with Xiaoming's faces, which are really quite different. I hope they can coexist peacefully. To this end, Xiaoming had to adjust their smart programs appropriately. You must know that some modified bodies only know how to fight and kill, and they will definitely not be able to do it without adjustment. In addition, on Nuwa Star, Xiaoming also discovered and confiscated some semi-finished products that were not fully cultivated. After the scientists under their command complete the cultivation work, they will also go to Kunlun. One thing needs to be emphasized. The area covered by Xiaoming's several skill releases is actually very limited, and it is impossible to recover all his clones and modified bodies. This is just Xiaoming expressing an attitude. Tells in Hangu that I, a ghost, don't like my DNA to be abused like this. There is no need to worry about angering the other party. If you can please a ghost agent, I believe that Nuhan will soon hand over all the replicas it has on hand, as well as Xiaoming's DNA samples and research information. Previously, some of these things fell into the hands of other forces in the Nuhan Kingdom. However, as long as Nuhan Kingdom releases the news, I believe sensible people will give things to Xiaoming. Everyone is bound to die, and who would want to be sent by a ghost to write down something in a small notebook? If you don't do well in your next life, thank you. Of course, there will definitely be some people who are lucky enough to keep some secrets and hide some samples. There is nothing we can do about it, we can only wait until they are dead to settle the score. In the end, the total number of clones and modified bodies received by Xiaoming actually reached 4 digits. To his surprise, this was too much. In fact, there were not so many originally. The number of copy modifications for each person is only about 300 to 500. There will be replenishment only if there is a loss. There is absolutely no need to keep thousands of them on hand. Zhang Xiaoming's body was cultivated so much because of the incident of attracting light spirits, which caused the space military to pay more attention to his DNA and create more bodies for experiments. As a result, the experiment was not very successful. Those bodies were confiscated by Xiaoming, and a lot of resources were wasted. These are things for later. Theoretically, if Xiaoming completely unleashes the full power of the world is mine and constantly replenishes energy, he can turn all humans and other creatures within the skills coverage into his subordinates, including the army of the Nuhan Kingdom. Even if Lieutenant General Miao Qing, who has reached B-level strength, at most Xiaoming will spend more time and energy. Fortunately, this skill does not take effect instantly. Under normal circumstances, B-level and C-level masters can seize the time to escape the ability range before being subdued by the skill. If Xiaoming insists on subduing them, he still needs to control them first, and then use mental power to slowly grind them. One day, he can break through their psychological defenses. How to properly use this ability depends entirely on the user's level and skills. In addition, there are some other factors that can affect the success rate and speed of subjugation. The first is whether the target is in sync with oneself. It is easier to see results between the same race, and the greater the difference, the more difficult it is to subjugate. Xiaoming's clones and modified bodies with his own DNA are almost effortless to subdue. The second is the gap between the target's mental power and his own. The stronger the mental power, the harder it is to conquer. This is also a common feature of all such skills. The third is the consumption problem. The power of the skill is too strong, and accordingly, it consumes a huge amount of mental power. Ordinary people really can't afford this ability. Only the Sarnaga clan and Xiaoming, who have cheats, are qualified to own the world.